Oh, here we are. This is Kommander K, Geekshock, speaking to Oliver Brackenbury of Brackenbury Books, publisher of the new Edge and Sword and Sorcery.
That is true. That is who I am. This was all accurate. I endorse these words.
So how are you doing, Oliver? You're coming up on this is going to be the third crowdfund, isn't it? Right? Because you
Second
crowdfunded
crowdfund, but
second.
it sort of feels like the third oomph of the magazine, right? Because we did
Okay,
issue
right.
0 in 2022, and that was like
Okay.
the blood, sweat, and tears, not sold for profit, sold at cost, thing, just to
Okay.
prove we could do the magazine, see if we liked doing a magazine. Spoiler, I did.
All right,
Um,
good.
and then we got it out there to show people, like, hey, here's what we can do. And then that was like the proof of concept when we went into what you could think of as, I guess, the second big push, which was the crowdfund in early 2023, last year. That was to fund issues 1 and 2. That was to allow us to do 2 issues, to actually pay people, heaven forbid, and
Hmm.
also to produce it with traditional printing, which allowed us to do some kind of cooler stuff than what we
Okay.
were able to do with Amazon POD. Like, for example, our hardcover format, yes, a magazine in hardcover. We were able to give it bookmark ribbons. You can't do that with Amazon POD. Or we
Right.
could do like graphics printed right into the middle of the book, so we wouldn't have that kind of ugly white space in between of a two-page art spread that you
Hmm.
see in Amazon POD stuff. So yeah, anyway, it allowed us to upgrade the magazine. And
Awesome.
yeah, so now here we are, almost a year later, and we are going into what you could call the third big push, which is the crowdfund on BackerKit. We've switched platforms from Kickstarter to BackerKit
Right.
for reasons we can talk about if you're interested. But yeah, we switched over to BackerKit to do the crowdfund for issues 3 and 4. It is also kind of a we're not actually asking for money for this, but in a kind of way, it's a crowdfund also for Brackenbury Books to expand into publishing books. Because if this is successful, I will be doing another crowdfund later in the year for what will be the first, book. I don't want to give away too much right now, that we will
Wow.
be publishing. I really would like to eventually be publishing several books, each
Oh
year
my
alongside the magazine.
goodness. Now, I remember joining the Whetstone Discord and speaking with people. I remember hearing about aspirations of being a book publisher back then. Is this something that came with all of this, or is this something that you just
I
quietly wanted to do?
I probably daydreamed about it now, from almost the start of doing the magazine. Like when we had those conversations on the Whetstone Magazine Discord. Also, shout out to Whetstone Magazine, the Amateur Sword and Sorcery, currently on hiatus, but you can read all 8 issues thus far for free on their website,
Mhm.
which is easily found on blogspot.com. But yeah, anyway, bless them for creating their Discord, because it was like the petri dish in which things kind of came together for me to do something I'd been thinking about for 2 years prior, but had yet to find a strong enough focus to go through with it, which is do a magazine. Um, but yeah, probably pretty early on, I was already fantasizing about publishing books. Those fantasies have become much more serious. I will say that things have already been written with hopes that we will get to the place of being able to publish them later this year.
Ah,
So work is like done or being done, maybe is a better way of putting it, but like serious work has already been done in advance in preparation, because I don't want to jinx it, but I feel like we will definitely hit our like minimum funding for the magazine. I feel like we've worked really hard to build momentum. People saw what we did with issues 1 and 2 and were impressed by the sounds of I've seen online and reviews and all that kind of thing. So, but we want to raise as much as we can, especially because like our stretch goals, the first one is almost mandatory to me. I want to hit it so bad. Our first stretch goal is double art, same as last year.
mhm.
So that's exactly what it sounds like. It doubles the amount of interior illustrations so that every story gets 2 illustrations. Although this year in issues 3 and 4, um, all but one of each of the stories are, pardon me, bad grammar. In each issue, there will be one double length story, which will then in turn have double art. So you can double it again with the stretch goal. So there'll be like a 12,000 word story in each issue that'll have upwards of 4 illustrations if we hit that stretch goal.
Wow.
There's also a few other secret little things nested within it that I don't want to spoil, but the double art's the main thing. And then the second stretch goal is an international shipping discount. So,
Mhm.
we ship out of the States, and that can be a bit dear if you're in Germany or whatever, even if you're just in
Right.
Canada next door. So we thought, well, that sucks. How about we get, for our second stretch goal, it'll build like a little war chest that we can use to cover a $5 American discount on Canadian shipping and a $10 American discount on international shipping. So everywhere else but Canada and the States. So
Mm.
we're hoping like the double art makes it more exciting, the shipping makes it more accessible, and then everything after that is alternating pay raises for the authors and the artists, and the authors and the artists, and the authors and the artists, over and over into infinity. There's no cap on those pay raises. So when
Okay.
I say about like I really want to raise as much money as possible, it's not about filling my pocket. It's about wanting to enhance the magazine, make it more accessible, and pay our contributors as much as we possibly can. So yeah. Um, I think I just
You
like what kind of went into salesman mode there for a second. Pardon me.
Yeah.
What was your question?
No, I was going to, you said we could discuss backer kit if it's not too involved. Is financial consideration part of the switch to backer kit or was
A
what?
little bit, yeah. The platform fee, if you, okay, so on Kickstarter for years now, I think it's been at least a decade, BackerKit was a going concern. BackerKit is not out of nowhere, for those of you who've never
Right,
heard the name before. For about a decade now, it has been something that you could kind of glue on to the back end of a
right.
Kickstarter, where it would allow you, as a person running a campaign, to charge for shipping later, separately, and to basically just wait until you're about to ship the things, about a month beforehand in our case, and then go, okay, bing, people pay for shipping now. So it makes it more affordable, right? In a way, you're paying the same amount of money, but it's split across. You pay for the object, whatever it is,
Mm,
in the crowdfund proper, and then like however many months later you pay for the shipping. So that's kind of nice. It breaks it up, and also it allows the person running the campaign not to get boned if the cost of shipping goes up, right? Because sometimes people raise money for shipping in the actual pledges in the Kickstarter, and then maybe, especially if you have a complex board game project, let's say a year could go by, and then oh crap,
yeah.
you're actually like several $100s short
I've
of
heard
what you
those
need for the
stories.
shipping.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very good for both the backer and the person running the campaign. And that's just one of the things that you could do with it. But last starting early last year, BackerKit thought, hey, well, we've been like observing campaigns and been involved with campaigns for 10 years. Why don't we try running, making our own platform and do the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle from start to finish? And that was exciting to me just to have it all together. And part of how it saves money, to your question about the financial consideration, if you do BackerKit plus like stuck on top of a Kickstarter, as you're looking at about 11% total in like platform and credit card fees.
Hmm.
But if you just do BackerKit as a whole package, you use their platform, they're not going to charge you extra to use their built-in, pay the shipping later, et cetera, that I was describing. So it's only 9%. And 2% may not sound huge, but 2% on thousands of dollars, it
Yeah,
adds up, right?
right, right.
So yeah, like that right away was something that excited me. And also just having it all uniform, together as one system. Whereas obviously when you do Kickstarter plus backer kit, it's kind of, two systems that are simultaneous, and you have to kind of, there's some janky stuff you have to do in the background with Kickstarter to make it all work. So yeah, I just, it's smoother to have it all together. Another reason I really like it is because it's kind of like if the Kickstarter people were better at listening and to people and implementing suggested changes. There's just like a
Hmm.
lot of little bits and pieces that I've been wanting to see on Kickstarter for years as both a backer and a person who's run campaigns
Yeah.
to see them implemented. And I could spend an hour talking about those, so I'll spare you all, but just trust me, like the under the hood, it runs a lot smoother. And I just find it's a lot easier to use also as a backer, just like looking around the campaigns and the way they have like tabs set up. So it's very easy to leap between sections of it, especially because even some of the smaller campaigns will still have like a lot of scrolling to do if you want to get to
Hmm.
X, Y, or Z to check it out. Um, the other thing I really liked about it was, you know, I always try really, really hard to put myself in the shoes and it's, of the person across the table from me, so to speak. So if I'm, trying to sell my novel, I try to think about the reader. And in this case, I'm trying to think about not only the reader of the magazine, but the potential backer of the magazine and what that experience is like. And we've all watched campaigns where the thing is cool, but the campaign is just 30 days of them saying, please buy my thing, please buy my thing. And by like a few days into the campaign, you're like, okay, I get it. You want me to buy the thing. Like there's nothing new really being said. What I like about BackerKit that's relevant to that is that BackerKit actually has something called the community tab, right? On Kickstarter, you can do a comment, right?
Hmm.
And underneath updates, but that's about it. The community tab is kind of fun because, you can do, actually, I've got the thing open right here just to make sure. Also, I promise I'm not being paid by BackerKit to do this. I'm just enthusiastic about this platform and I'm explaining why I switched to it. You can do polls, you can do like stretch goals or achievements as they call them, as
Hmm.
essentially posts with like a little meter that fills up and people can chat underneath that. You can put
Right.
like call to action buttons on it. So, for example, one thing I don't mind spoiling, we've got some bonus short stories, digital format only, but still, that people can unlock by doing certain things, right? So we're
Oh.
already measuring, like, say, the amount of backers that we get and the amount of money we get, of course. But something that I can do in BackerKit that's really fun is I can make this like community like post saying if enough backers, share the campaign on Facebook using this button, and there's a button, you press if enough people honk on this button and share the campaign on Facebook, then all backers will get a free bonus thingy, in this case, a short story. So that's kind of fun, right? That lets me take other things. Like I do shares on Facebook or Twitter or Blue Sky, whatever. So it kind of makes this thing of like, hey, everybody, if you really want more stuff, yeah, share the campaign, and I benefit, and you get for free an additional thingy. And so that's part of the community thing, right? You can do polls, you can do just straight up discussions. Also, live streams are built into the platform, which
Hmm.
is great. You
Wow.
again with Kickstarter, you kind of have to like glue it on basically.
Yeah.
But with this, it's built in, and that's something else I really like is remember I said like I want to make these 30 days more than just saying please give me money, although but I'm not going to be coy about it. That's what I'm saying. Uh, I also want to make it kind of like an event unto itself. I want to make it fun. I want to make it a party. So there's all this kind of discussion and polls and things like that we can do. But the live streams for me are very exciting because like it's built right into the platform. They really encourage you to have like a launch party the day
Yeah.
that you launch the thing.
Yeah.
How you make that entertaining is up to you, of course. You can do all kinds of
Right.
things, whatever you can figure out to do with a live stream. We're going to do one ourselves at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on February 15th, which is when we launch. We're
Right.
going to launch at 8 a.m., but we'll wait until the evening when people can actually attend. So to have like a bit of a little,
Hmm.
it's kind of kind of a shoot the shit, like introduce people to the what's new in the campaign, talk about the magazine, take Q&A in the chat. That's going to be like a meet and greet with like the people doing the thing and
Hmm.
selling you on the thing and being like, here's what's cool about this. Here's what we've upgraded. Here's what we changed. Kind of like some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about with you today, but in party form. And it doesn't hurt that one of our people, Kevin Beckett, our social media coordinator, he loves to DJ, so I'm sure he'll bring some of that element into it. If nothing else, the lighting rig he has in his office is hilarious, and I can't wait for people to see that and enjoy it again. It's like a disco in like a spare bedroom. But yeah,
Hmm.
so you said we're gonna do that, right? And then we've got a few more planned throughout the month. So like sort of once a week until it's over, we're gonna have another live stream. We're gonna have one where I interview
Oh
and we'll
man.
talk about I'll very like just the headlines for these, but I'll tell you what we've got coming. I'll talk about this more in detail in a minute but you know this from talk on the server. We're bringing back a classic character, Jarell LaJorie, who hasn't had a news story
Hmm.
in 85 years since her creator and authors, Catherine Elmore, put the character down, moved on with their life as people do. But they're great stories that have been continuously in print since an anthology in 1969. And I've always wanted more stories, and it's very cool as a publisher to have gotten to a place where I can make that happen. That story will be written, or has been written, pardon me, by Molly Tanzer. If you don't know her, what can I say? Google her bibliography. She's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
She edited also, as well as wrote a whole bunch of stuff. She edited Swords v Cthulhu, which is a very
Hmm.
fun anthology, and
Yeah, I have
I
that.
mentioned that for the obvious sword and sorcery connection there. Like she gets the genre, she gets the character. We'll talk about that more later. So I just thought it'd be fun to do a live stream where I'll do like a mini interview with her and just really we'll both just geek out about Jarell LaJorie and like basically have it be a way for people who've never heard of the character to learn in depth. Again, Q&A in the chat, why not? Why who is Jarell LaJorie? Why should I care? This cover art looks cool, but tell me more.
Hmm.
So I felt that
Hmm.
that'd be a good idea. We're also going to do a new Edge Sword and Sorcery story chat, which, if you're on our Discord, you'd be familiar with this. It's where we like to do a panel discussion of a contemporary sword and sorcery story. Something preferably from very recent, but at least somewhere in the last few years. Because I love the genre, but the majority of the discussion of it online is focused on the classics. I love the classics. It's literally in our tagline for the magazine, "Made with Love for the Classics" is the first half of that tagline.
Right.
And I volunteered in an archive. Like I love the old stuff, and like I say, we're bringing back a classic character,
Yeah.
but I do find that the focus on the classics does kind of not leave enough oxygen for the new stuff. And how do you keep a thing going if you don't give oxygen to the new stuff? So yeah, we'll be talking about a new short sword and sorcery short story in that panel discussion, and that'll be something again people can pop in the chat and ask questions, all that good stuff. We're always going to make this participatory, so I think that'll be kind of fun because that's a way of showing off kind of the nonfiction element in its essence, right? For our magazine,
Hmm.
how we do essays and that kind of thing. So the story chat will do that, I hope, and then I've been thinking, what are other fun communities that kind of overlap with sword and sorcery? Have you ever heard of the music genre dungeon synth?
Yeah.
Yeah, and listener, even if you haven't, you can kind of guess from the name, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the aesthetic is very sword and sorcery, very like dark fantasy and that kind of thing. The sound it varies from musician to musician, obviously, but it tends to be kind of crunchy synth. You often have, but heavy metal gets in there as well. So it's a community that I really want to connect with. I want to bring other people in, to keep and to enjoy the fiction, and so yeah, I've actually been reaching out. We're building a roster of probably like 3 to 5. We'll see. We're still doing it as of recording, putting it together but 3 to 5 musicians where I'll do like mini interviews with each for like 10 minutes and just be like, hey, blah, blah, about your music, about Sword Sorcery. Where's the overlap? What do you think about that? And then they'll either do a live performance of a song or we'll like patch in, like stream a music video of theirs and then just kind of do rotation between musicians. So already
Wow.
kind of a party thing. And then finally, the big finale. Technically, the thing ends at 8 a.m. on Saturday, March 16th, but I'm not having a party over breakfast. So the Friday, the final Friday, on the Friday, March 15th, probably 7 p.m. EST, we'll keep an eye on our socials in the campaign. We'll announce it. We're going to do something we did last year that was very fun and people seem to really enjoy. Maybe you remember this. On the final Friday of last year's campaign, we did essentially a telethon live stream. It's the final push. We're trying to get people excited to help us get into another stretch goal. We actually hit double art during the telethon last year, so I'm glad we did that.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And it's a bit of Q&A, it's a bit of everything. One thing that was really fun last year was adding like a game element to it, where I had gotten my hands on this early 1980s Dungeons and Dragons romance romance fantasy genre. They don't call it this because it's a copyright, but whatever they called it, choose your own adventure book.
Right.
And it was something they did in the early 80s. They were like, we gotta get girls playing this. I know, romance. And the funny, and like I make fun of it because it's retrograde thinking, but it also I've had a lot of women tell me, well, it kind of worked on me. So, whatever, right? There's nothing wrong with liking romance. And so yeah, so we had a bit of fun where I played through a little bit of that while people would be like, kiss him or go through that door, in the chat. And I'm just, again, things are still kind of coming together as we're talking, but I am hoping we are going to have a special guest star who will run a very special game that myself and all the others involved will participate in. I mean, you can kind of infer it's
Mhm.
going to be a TTRPG, but but it's one that makes sense for what we're doing. I'll just say that it's not like just a random thing or fifth
Right.
ed D&D. So I think that telethon will be really fun. And if it's anything like last year, we'll say it's going to be 2 hours, and then we'll be like drinking and taking questions and until like midnight. So that's the last big bash of the campaign. And that's
Ah.
just the live streams,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So I think I could go in more detail still, but you get my point, right? About how
Yeah.
we're really trying to like, make the most of the platform, and Backroom just has more options for us to make the most of. It allows us to do these fun unlockable things like the 25 shares on Facebook gets you an extra story, kind of thing. Or like the community has like a ranking for the most active people in the community tab, the people who are chatting the most and contributing the most. And
Hmm.
whoever gets number one on that, because there'll be a ranking of like top backer, to be clear, it's not how much money you spend, it's how much you engage and like have
Okay.
fun in the
Okay.
community tab. So don't worry, folks, you don't have to like throw $1 million at me to get top ranking. But whoever gets top ranking, well, there's a unique reward for that person that we are offering,
Oh.
where presumably that person will be getting physical issues. If they aren't, we'll figure it out. I don't care that, there's only one person we're doing this for. I can afford it. But presumably they're doing that. And so they're probably going to get soft covers. That's the most commonly thing we
Hmm.
bid for. So what I'll do is I'll get a copy each of issues 3 and 4, and probably using post-it notes. I'll ask the person. Maybe they don't mind if I write on it directly, but if they do mind, I'll use post-it notes, and I will annotate both issues with like editor's commentary
No.
on the whole thing. So just like creative decisions, funny stories, whatever I can think
Hmm.
of that's of
Yeah.
interest to me, and I think would be of interest to you. That one person, they will get these like totally customized
Wow.
issues 3 and 4.
Wow. And
So
there'll
yeah.
be a couple people who stay up 24 hours a day trying to keep up on the community just to win. That sounds
Well,
fun.
speaking of staying up late, we're also doing a first backer reward. So whoever gets to be literally the first backer
Uh,
on February 15th, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Apologies to those of you on the opposite side of the globe. But it needs to be a time I'm awake so I can press the big red launch button. The very first backer will get a unique prize. It is something physical that I will mail to them, and it is something that is unique. It doesn't exist beyond one copy. I'll just say that. I want to keep it a secret for now because
mm,
I'm being coy in the hopes it'll make people more excited to give it a shot.
yeah.
But once that person's won it, I will happily announce what it is. So don't worry, folks. You will get to find out sooner or later. But first backer, unique reward. So you see where I'm going with, right? Like I've been looking at this whole thing. I'm like, well, the first backer could get a reward. The
Yeah.
top backer in the community thing could get a reward. Okay,
Yeah.
what else can we do? So we've just been brainstorming stuff, and having a lot of fun with that. The Biggie. Actually, this kind of blends questions as well. There are blends things we're talking about here. So something else with new, pardon me, with BackerKit that you can do that I like is you can again you can kind of bodge this together yourself with Kickstarter, but they do it for you automatically. They track who's a backer in the first 48 hours.
Hmm.
So early bird rewards are easier to do. Also, because they can track even though this is my first time using the platform, everybody who backed us last time would have used the backer kit thing on the in the back end.
Hmm.
So that means they already have accounts. That means backer kit already knows they backed us before, even though it was on another platform. So we can track returning backers, right? So what am I going on about? This is a lot of detail. Well, here's something I thought would be really fun. Last year we did a very traditional crowdfunding thing. We had a page in one of our issues that was a thank you to people who backed us,
Yeah.
specifically physical backers. But yeah, lots of people do that. Nothing wrong with that. It's fun. But new year, I want to do something new, right? I was like, what can I do that just is like a big thank you to the backers? And I was like, oh, what has nobody done in a sword and sorcery magazine that I'm aware of anyway before? Or even an SFF magazine that I'm aware of before. Do you remember sticker books?
Yeah.
You're a kid and you buy like packs of randomized stickers and you try and match them to empty frames with numbers. Like, oh, sticker 6 goes in frame 6. Awesome. That finishes the story of how Batman did whatever, or
Hmm.
whatever franchise. Usually it was tied to some big franchise. Um, I just thought about it. And I was like, well, how much are stickers? So I looked into it and it's very doable. We're doing it. The back page of issue 3, probably, but one of these issues, issue 3 or 4, will be a sticker page.
Wow.
And the whole page will be filled out with essentially just 3 stickers. It's not going to be so much about the collectible thing because we're not actually a sticker magazine. But with the one page, you'll get 3 stickers, and each one has a different condition, right? So just backing the magazine, every single backer who gets the physical plane, because we can't put stickers in digital. Sorry, I haven't got that technology yet. Um, but everyone who backs the physical format will get a approximately 650 word piece of flash fiction.
Hmm.
So like a little story on a big sticker that takes up like half the page, right? And then everybody who backs us, uh, who's a returning backer, like God bless you, you backed us last year, you're coming back, you will get an illustration sticker of a scene from that short story, right? So it's like you get the art paired with it. And then those of you who get in the first 48 hours, because we really want to, it would make me feel so good if we could hit 100% in the first 48 hours.
Sure.
So we're trying to drive that. People who get in the first 48 hours will get something we did last year in regular format, a cocktail recipe, tried and true, with a sword and sorcery theme and a small illustration to go with it.
Huh.
Last year we had like a Jarell Jaree cocktail, and in another issue we had an Elric cocktail. I won't
Hmm.
spoil who they're going to be based on this time, but I'm mentioning him again, Kevin, our social media coordinator. He loves to invent cocktails, and yeah, actually, pick ingredients that like make sense and he'll write in like fun little jokes or observations of like why this makes sense for this character's drink. So, just it's a fun extra, right? So yeah, I mean, we'll those 2 other stickers, the returning backer and the 48-hour backer, we'll probably make those available as add-ons. But if you want to get those stickers for free, you would be one of those things. But you'd be there in the first 48 hours, be someone who backed us last year. So yeah, we're actually gonna have like a sticker page, man, and like everybody gets the story minimum. So I just, yeah, this is just another illustration of what I'm talking about, where I'm just trying really hard to make crowdfunding fun, to
Right.
make it a party, to make it a game, for the duration. And that's something I really hope everybody will join us for. So yeah, this is I think most, but probably not even all of why I chose to move to BackerKit to come back
Hmm.
here.
All right. Well, that I didn't realize I didn't realize there was so much of a difference. So, but then again, I've never had anyone who uses it explained it. So I'm familiar with BackerKit, of course, because I've done it a few times on. For me, the use was Kickstarters that had closed and I wanted to participate in anyway. And so you
Yeah, because it does
jump
let you
in
do
at
kind of a pre-order store between the end of the campaign and the beginning of like direct retail sales.
right. Yeah.
But none of these exclusives I'm describing will be available in the pre-order stores. The crowdfund is
Oh,
the place to do it.
yeah. All right. So, just to point out for anybody who's listening, we are recording this 6 days and some 12 hours or so before you actually drop.
Mhm.
So, hopefully we'll get this up in time before, so that people can hear about it and participate. But there'll be things to participate in even after you launch.
Oh yeah, I mean it's for the full 30 days. Like stuff's happening,
Yeah,
the whole time through. Like I say, at
that's
minimum
very,
our live streams, every week.
yeah.
And I mean, I haven't even told you everything I've got up my sleeve. Like as we work through things, I'm gonna unveil other new things. If I just threw out
Hmm.
every cool thing we're doing all up front, it'd be overwhelming. Maybe it's already
Right.
a little overwhelming.
Right. Well, one of my questions was how is this different from the prior crowd fund and from what you did for issue 0, but already we're hearing a lot of how it's different. I mean, it seems like you're attacking this with a lot more confidence and a lot of, oh boy, next time I want to be able to, and now you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to build on what we did last time. I always want to do better, I always want to upgrade things. Like last year, a bookmark ribbon for our hardcover format was a stretch goal. We
Hmm.
didn't make it. No shame, whatever, is our first crowdfund. But later I was able to, I do a Patreon. It's not huge, but I do a Patreon that all the funds go towards my publishing and writing endeavors. And so thank you to my Patreon supporters because they've later paid for the bookmark ribbons, basically.
Hmm.
So I stuck those in and people really love them. And so this time they're baked in. It's not
Oh,
a
that's
stretch
great.
goal. Like
Okay.
if you get a hardcover, you're getting a hardcover with bookmark ribbons with colors chosen, from the cover art kind of thing. We always
Hmm.
try to make it, we really pride ourselves on the layout and design of the
Hmm.
magazine. Nathaniel Webb deserves credit for so much. He's basically been the Riker to my Picard on this whole thing.
Uh-huh.
But specifically his title role is layout and design. And so, him and I've worked together to make this beautiful 3-column text, magazine where each 3-column page we can treat it almost like a 3 by 3 square comic book page in terms of how we allocate space.
Yeah.
So we did a little bit of that in issue 2 last year, where we had like an illustration that kind of cut diagonally across in like like steps basically, and the text was for the scene. This year, I hope we'll be even more ambitious and do crazier stuff with like how we can muddle the presentation. Not muddle, pardon me. Gosh, sorry everybody. I'm really tired. I was just saying before we started recording, I got a new puppy. And new puppies are they're so cute and they so friggin' don't sleep. So apologies if I step on my tongue a little bit here. But yeah. Yeah, so it's just always about trying to do more. So now the bookmark ribbon, that's standard. I mean, we can't go back. So do I have another thing I want to do to upgrade the hardcover? Yes. But I'm going to keep it a secret for now because um, I do want the main stretch goals. Like I say, I want to do the art and the shipping thing and get to the pay bumps. We'll
Hmm.
have to if we raise like a good chunk of money, I will announce this other thing. But
Oh.
yeah, there's a potential upgrade to the hardcovers that's coming. And yeah, so that's another thing about the trad printing. We can do these kind of fun upgrades. We can do almost anything we can think of that we have the money for. Whereas
Hmm.
Amazon, you can only do what Amazon lets you.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, and one of the simplest of things is just the fact that the hardcovers are stitch bound, which for those of you who don't know or care about these things, well, trust me, you do care because perfect bound is the funny name for glue binding.
Yeah.
Glue binding is not perfect. There's a reason it's called that, but whatever, who cares? Uh, Glue binding is fine. Glue binding is good for the classic soft covers. That's what you'd want for that. For the hard covers, it's stitch bound. And what does stitch bound do? Well, it holds it together much longer, like
Hmm.
longer than you'll be alive if you take good care of it. And also, it lets you lay the magazine flat, perfectly flat on your table and just browse it that way, which is so nice. And of course, shows
Yeah.
off things like the art even better when we have like a 2-page spread. So yeah, things like that. We couldn't do it with Amazon POD. That's why the crowdfunding is what it is because we wanted to upgrade. And now we've done it, and now we're looking at more and more we can do without making the magazine wildly expensive or spending all our money on upgrades and not paying our creators as much as we could.
Hmm.
Because we are serious about that too, like I say with the stretch goals. Yeah, gosh, I'm kind of talking around in circles. Did I mention the puppy?
No.
What was it? What was your question again? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I think we're
No.
asking me saying this. We're serious about doing more and more each time. Yeah, it's just
Hmm.
it keeps it interesting for me as well.
Right.
I don't ever want. I mean, I hope I don't eat my words on this like years from now. But if we're still doing it years from now, but I never want the magazine to settle into a rut. I'm always kind of
Sure.
like looking at it and being like, how can we improve? How can we tweak it? Keep it recognizable. We don't want to dramatically change it every single year. Like this year it's a soccer ball with words printed on it. But
Hmm.
but yeah, I want to pay attention to what people like, and I want to figure out how we can always be tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it to make it better. So yeah, and people loved the hardcovers last year. I was really delighted to see way more people got them than I expected.
I
So I guess
like
that's why
them.
I'm kind of talking them up a bit because I'm a very like book as object guy, and I just love seeing the hardcovers on my shelves and pointing them out like
Yeah.
archive
Yeah.
text.
No, I
But
was
the
very
soft
fond of
cover,
them.
yeah, but this and also they're kind of collectible because we don't we print a lot more of the soft covers. The soft covers are actually made with stores in mind. I'm very proud to announce something that happened since last crowdfund. We have a US distributor, Microcosm Publishing.
Oh my.
So if you run a retail store of any kind, comics, games, books, obviously, and you think you might want to carry New Edge Sword and Sorcery, our first two issues in softcover are now available through Microcosm Publishing.
Very
So
cool.
or you can hit them up or hit me up directly, whatever. We'll figure it out. Get us on your shelves. But
Hmm.
so that's very exciting. So that's also like soft covers are more affordable. So we print a lot of those. Is my point. And they're great, and their cover design is actually different from the hardcover design because we made those with like stores in mind now.
Hmm.
But the hardcovers, they're the collector's thing. We only printed 125 of each issue last year in hardcover. We had a bit over, so 130. And actually, just yesterday, we sold out entirely of issue one in hardcover, which
Hmm.
was understandably a little more popular than two because it's number one, and also it has the Michael Moorcock Elric story that we were so lucky to
Yeah.
have. So competition for that was fierce, but two only has so many left as well, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, the hardcovers are the fun collectible thing, and so and they're the beautiful object thing. So I kind of talk them up a little too much, maybe. But like I said, the soft cover is accessible, it's cheaper, it's something hopefully you can get in stores. But get it on the crowdfund because 100% you will get it before stores, long before stores. If you
Right.
get it on the crowdfund,
Right.
it's another reason to do it this way. Plus the whole pay shipping later, etc.
You mentioned Moorcock and getting the Elric story. Now we have the Jurel. How can I ask how you went about landing these stories?
Okay, so well, with Mike, as I'm just gonna own it right now. I call him Mike sometimes when I'm being interviewed, and then
I've
people are like,
noticed that,
and it's
yes.
like, oh, Mister, what are you? His godson now. I'm like, no, no, no. It's just because Michael Moorcock, Mister Moorcock, signs everything, Mike.
Oh,
And you can, if you look for it, I actually was at an archive, like I spent time at an SFF archive in Toronto called the Merrill Collection. They had a copy of Amra magazine from 1961 with an essay on this thing that we're starting to call sword and sorcery
right.
by Michael Moorcock, and he did not sign it Michael or Michael Moorcock or anything. He just signed it Mike, and that's how he signed
Interesting.
all of his
Oh,
correspondence
okay.
with me. So after a while, my brain at first it felt disrespectful, like calling a friend's parent Judy or something. But very quickly, I just was like, "Yeah, Mike." And then somebody called me on it, not unfairly. I was just on the chat talking about whatever, and I was like, "Oh, well, Mike, I think would do this." And then I promise you, it's not false familiarity. It's just my brain has been rewritten with yeah, he's not inviting me to any parties. Don't worry, folks.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I wish the story for that was more dramatic. It essentially just came down to good fortune and daring, and then good fortune again. First, I had the good fortune of happening to know somebody who had his email, and so they're like, "Oh, well, what if you got Michael Moorcock for a story?" And I was like, "Ha ha ha, sure, that'd be great."
Uh-huh.
And then the friend was like, "Well, here's his email." I mean, you'll notice I'm not naming that person. I don't want them getting harassed with the contact info. But yeah, so they're like, here's his email. And I was like, oh shit. So then part two, daring. I kind of took a deep breath and wrote a short, polite email being like, oh, Mr. Moorcock, would you like to be in my magazine? You know, uh, hit send, exhaled very loudly. And then luck, part two, he said yes.
That's
We
great.
have a bit of rudimentary figuring out schedules, whatever, but he said yes, bless him. And I think it's because and this is me guessing, folks. I'm not telling you anything he said to me explicitly, but I feel like maybe, aside from the fact that he just wants to keep being published in the Sword and Sorcery realm, I mean, Elric is still very a big thing. Saga just came out with those big complete collections in
Yep.
2022, and now
Yeah.
I've helped wreck that by publishing another Elric story. Sorry. I've made them less complete. Elric is still very relevant and obviously very important to Mike. And he also, I think, maybe just a bit of sympathy to what we're doing, I'm guessing, because he also has been a magazine editor, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
He
yeah.
did mainly sci-fi, but I think there's some fantasy in it too, magazine back in the late, oh gosh, again, puppy, sorry folks, I'm probably buggering the facts here, but I want to say it was called New Worlds,
Yes.
and it was mainly sci-fi. And
Hmm.
it's about just basically publishing stuff that was a bit different from like hard sci-fi like Heinlein Asimov kind of things. It's about
Oh,
doing
yeah.
sort of loopier, more like Philip K. Dick kind of things, and
Part
just
of the
pushing
new
things.
wave.
Yeah, new wave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just kind of hope that maybe with New Edge Sword and Sorcery and our whole thing of trying to like push like love the classics, keep the genre recognizable, but push boundaries of what we can do with it, as well as try and expand the circle of people who are involved as authors, artists, and fans. Making it more representative of the human race at large.
Hmm.
I have to think that maybe put a twinkle in his eye. I'm hoping. But anyway, he said yes, and so
That's great.
we got that story. Although it's funny, I didn't know it was going to be an Elric story until after the crowdfund was over, eh?
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I was kind of shy in a sense. I was cowed by this living legend of the genre. So when he said yes, and I told him the word count and all the quotidian details, and he was like, "All right, works for me." I was like, "Great." And it just kind of stopped there. Because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"I'll publish your grocery list, Mr. Moorcock,"
Yeah, all right.
And then so it wasn't until a little after the crowdfund happened he was like, "Yeah, so I'm thinking Elric, and I'm thinking I'm gonna do this," and I was like, "Oh!" And so it was like I got him all over again. I got that excited,
Oh,
but then also
that's
I was like,
great.
"Shit, I should have asked because I could have advertised in the crowdfund."
Oh,
If you go back, because it's still on Kickstarter. If you go find our Kickstarter campaign from last year, it says Michael Moorcock, new
right.
story, original story. Doesn't say Elric.
It's funny because I would bet a lot of people would assume Elric, but you having said that, that's true. It's not a done deal if it isn't actually said.
No, I mean, it could be a new
Wow.
character. Maybe he pulls Corum
Yeah.
out of the raft, the attic. I don't know.
Core. Yeah.
So yeah, who knows, right? So that was really cool. That was a wonderful experience. And for anybody who's wondering, he is very lovely, and I'm not just saying that. He was. It was a 100% positive meet your heroes experience, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he's very humble but sure of himself, and conversing with him was very fun. I actually got an early draft of the thing that wasn't quite done yet at one point because he was flying across the ocean, and as he joked in his email, just in case the plane doesn't get the landing, like, which was very funny. But also, I was like, oh no, I really hope that doesn't happen.
There
Imagine
you go.
posthumously publishing like two
Yes,
thirds
the
of a
incomplete last Elric story.
right. Like, I mean, I guess it would move issues, but I'd rather move it other ways.
Not a way you want to
Um,
do it.
no, 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 no. So and yeah, we exchanged cat photos in one email. Like he likes Siamese, I like Siamese. So yeah, it was super cool, super cool. Lovely, lovely, lovely man, no complaints. And also it's not an original story, but we are reprinting an obscure Elric story, not
Hmm.
included in that saga collection,
Right.
with a new original art by Sapro, who's the artist who did the lovely Elric art for this original
Saprophile
story.
is one of my.
Actually, you know what's funny? I don't blame you for saying that. That's not the artist. Just to make things really confusing, we have two artists who have
No,
aliases. One is
really.
Saprofile, and they are doing the art for our Jarell story, which makes a lot of
Yes.
sense for reasons I'll get into when we talk more about Jarell. And then we have Sapro. That's it, just Sapro.
That would
Who
explain some confusion I had. Okay.
Yeah, I don't blame you at
I
all.
didn't put
Yeah,
my
no,
finger
and their
on that.
styles are very different, and they're both very cool people, very different, personalities.
I really like
Um,
Saprophile's style. That
yeah.
Saprophile and Trevor and Winya, I'm very excited about you saying
Well,
that.
you'll be happy to know they're both coming back.
Yes.
Sapphire is illustrating the Jarell story. Trevor, um, I'm pretty sure I know what story he's on, but I don't want to call it just yet on the
Okay.
recording.
Hmm.
I'm in the final stages. I've locked most of the pairings, but I'm still kind of like, oh, maybe,
Right.
I'll give myself some wiggle room. But he will be in the magazine for sure.
Hmm.
Um, so so yeah, so that was Mike. It was great, and we're gonna have a reprint of an obscure Elric story with a new original art. So that's cool. He's still kind of with us this year, which I like. Um, Jarell, how did that happen? Well,
Yeah.
I was very intrigued. In 2022, I saw there was a Kickstarter for a TTRPG, D&D compatible, but also OSR, which for those of you who don't know, just means basically more generic version of D&D rules. But yeah, there was a role-playing game campaign based on the Jarell Jaree stories called Black God's Kiss. That's the name of the most
Oh,
well-known of the stories.
wow.
And I was like, holy cow, that was cool. So I looked at it, checked it out, and I love the art. All of the art in that is done by Saprophile. So I reached out to Saprophile and I was like, hey, I'm doing this magazine, blah, 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 and got her on board. And she illustrated Gemma Files' story
Hmm.
in issue 2, and people seem to really like that. And then come the spring of 2023, I'm thinking ahead now to issues 3 and 4, even though I was still wrapping up issues 1 and 2. That's just how it goes in publishing. There's always lots of long-term overlapping thinking because things take a long time. And I was like, well, I definitely want to have Saprophile back. Like that's happening for sure. And then I thought, well, hang on. Those role-playing game guys got the rights to do something with Jarell. Maybe I could, So I reached out to them and they were very friendly and said, yeah, sure. Here's the contact information for the Estate of Steel More,
Oh,
give it a
wow.
whirl. So I did. That story is not exciting. It was basically I wrote them, we talked, we agreed on something, money was exchanged, the contract was signed.
Hmm.
So just pure quotidian business stuff. But you know what? I was very happy it happened. And then I had to find an author. I considered a few different people. Ultimately, I can thank Christopher Rao for recommending Molly Tanzer, who I was aware of, but I hadn't read all of her stuff, kind of thing. And
Right.
like I said, there's a lot of authors to consider. But yeah, Christopher Rao recommended her, and I'm really glad he did. We had a video call, kind of a get to know you, talked about the character, talked about how we feel about sword and sorcery as a genre in general. Very quickly, I was like, yes, this is the author I need. Molly's very talented, but you can meet people who are very talented, but maybe they don't get it. They don't get what you're
Hmm.
going for.
Yeah.
Molly gets it. Molly gets Sword and Sorcery. Molly gets Jarell. And now I've read her story, Jarell and the Mirror of Truth. I don't mind revealing the title. And that is the double length story that will be in issue 3, which has a Jarell on the cover by a different artist. Yeah, it's I know I'm a guy here trying to sell a thing. So it's always going to be a little suspect that I'm like, ew, such a good story. Oh my God. But it is.
Hmm.
She did a really good job of like kind of making it feel like Ciela Moore's voice, right? Because I mean that's if you want to get really technical about it, Scott Oden is an author with big opinions on this. If you want to write like a proper pastiche,
Yeah.
it can't just be the character and the setting or whatever. It's got to be like the
Right.
voice of the author. So Molly like updated the prose in certain ways. There are some things that Ciela Moore did which just aren't very popular anymore. Like people who read one of her early stories, the sequel to Black God's Kiss, Black God's Shadow, has a lot of very in-depth descriptions of the landscape as Gerald walks around, and some people find that kind of slow. So that was something that like Molly tweaked. But nonetheless, she looked very much at like the kind of phrasings and so on, the kind of pulp, style of writing that Seal Moore had, and very much
Nice.
adapted that to her own voice and kind of blends it all together in a way that really, really works. It feels like you're reading a Jarell story, not just someone who is writing Jarell. You know what I mean? I also think it works brilliantly as an introduction of the character. All right from the jump, Molly and I were like, we got to make this work for people who've never read Joelle before, people who have no idea who she is. So it's great for beginners. And the way it ends, I'm not going to spoil the ending, of course, but the way it ends feels like a great way to set us up for more adventures that I hope we get to do at some point.
Very
So,
cool.
so yeah, I mean, Jarell felt really good. And for those of you who are like, why? Who is he talking about? Jarell Cherie, the real tiny pitch here, because I could talk about her for a whole hour. I did actually on another podcast. Jarell Cherie is the first sort of warrior woman heroine of sword and sorcery. She was written in the 30s by Catherine L. Moore, who was a contemporary of all the other Weird Tales people like Robert E. Howard with Conan, Clark Ashton
Right.
Smith with his stuff, and so on. They roll in correspondence, and Robert E. Howard actually claimed direct inspiration by C.L. Moore to write better, more interesting women characters in his stories. If I remember correctly, Valyria definitely was something he said was influenced by C.L. Moore. So that's
Okay.
pretty cool, right? She was influencing parallel, not just people who came after her.
Hmm.
And she, believe me, you can once you know her stories, you'll see her shadow stretch long across fantasy fiction. So yeah, and I mean, as far as like what makes her cool, okay, she's a warrior woman with red hair, predating Red Sonja and all the others that would come later. Uh, that's cool. But if it was just a case of like, it's a funny thing where like she's the first woman SNS heroine, and C.L. Moore was the first woman SNS author. But if that was all there was that was interesting about either of these people, those would just be historical footnotes. And I
Hmm.
would not be in a rush to publish a new Jarell story, right?
Right.
What makes me in a rush to publish it is because I find the character goddamn captivating. The adventures that she goes on tend to take her to another world. She's almost like Alice in Wonderland with a big effing
Yeah.
sword, is how
Yeah.
I like to put it. She
Hmm.
pretty much always winds up going to some other horrible world, even though she is ostensibly of our planet, right? She's a 14th century French warlord and not always a nice person, which in a way that makes her more interesting. I don't want to say like I don't mean like grimdark, she's horrible all the time. I just mean she's a 14th century warlord.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
she has that kind of outlook.
Hmm.
And she has a ferocious temper and these intense yellow eyes, these leonine yellow eyes are just describing the stories. And just like her emotional interiority is as important to the stories as the action and the weirdness. And boy, does the weird get weird with a capital W. So I just find this original story so engaging, and that's why, like I said earlier, I was like, I want more, but I'm never going to get any more unless.
Right.
So yeah, I really want to try and raise awareness of the character, and like I say, maybe we'll get to do more stories moving forward. I don't
Well, I
know.
think what strikes me a key phrase right there, as you said, is good for beginners, good entry story. If
Yep.
this story gets people wanting to read the older C.L. Moore stories, then right there is a job well done.
This is what I'm hoping. Yeah, and it just comes back to this thing of like, yeah, like I love the classics, but we can't only talk about the classics. Or if we do want to do the classics, we gotta bring in new stuff. We gotta bring in new stuff to keep fresh air, fresh blood coming in. So yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what happens as we try and split the difference here by bringing in new stories with a classic character, kind of trying
Hmm.
to do it all at once, as well as our new characters by our assorted other authors.
Right.
I mean, there's lots of different characters that I really like. But I tend to think of Astarta, who is like an ancient Greek SNS character, and the heroine of uh, June Orchid Parker. Now, I like her and her stories. I like all of the authors in their stories. That's why I put them in
Right.
the magazine.
Yeah.
Why would I put them in if I didn't? But I guess I tend to think of June and Astarta because of the fact that June is like a brand new author. It made me
Yeah.
feel really happy to have Michael Moorcock, the legend, with a new Elric last year, but it also made me really happy to bring in a brand new author with their first published story ever, and
Hmm.
that being June with Astarta. And June and Astarta will be returning this year as well. So, if you enjoyed the story last year, you can look forward to another one. Um,
Hmm.
and all kinds of other characters and authors in between. As I start mentioning people, I worry that the people I don't mention will feel slighted or whatever.
Right.
And we do have a lot of authors and artists. We have 20 authors and I want to say 18 artists
Ooh.
uh,
Okay.
across the two issues. So
I did a head count because you
oh yeah.
had, it looks by my, if I counted correctly, you had 15 pieces of fiction in one and two.
Yep.
And
Plus
of
not plus
that,
our nonfiction authors, right?
yeah, and I wasn't including the nonfiction.
Oh, okay, okay.
Just that I was focusing on fiction. The reason was is because I wanted to ask you, um, it looks like you're beginning to round up, bring in more women authors. And how do you feel about that? How are you going about getting women authors interested in sword and sorcery? Bringing in
Well,
people like June, like Molly,
oh
Gemma
yeah, yeah,
Files, Bryn, who I
yeah.
know I'm familiar with from the Discord.
So So yeah, I mean, it's like whether we're talking about women or people of color or trans and non-binary people, like any demographic that's outside of my own, white cis middle-aged fella, white guy thing,
Hmm.
whatever group it is you're talking about, like, I just, I've been trying to think of a way to put it where it's like people who not even just like bad faith critics who I have no interest in engaging with, but like some people who just
Right.
honestly are kind of like, well, how do you, are you prioritizing story quality below, getting people from certain groups? Like, what are you doing, man?
Right.
And my feeling is always like, that why not both taco girl gif that does the rounds online?
Hmm.
It's like from a Taco Bell commercial or something. She's like, why not both?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
my feeling is always it's a false choice. And I think actually in most creative endeavors, in most aspects of most creative endeavors, you want to beware false choices. You'll think you have a binary choice, and then it's like, wait, no, actually, there's many choices, or I can even go multiple things. It's like you want a car that has both four wheels and an engine that runs, right? Well, I want stories that are really good and written by a variety of people.
Hmm.
It's that simple. You just kind of pay attention to what you're doing as you load up your plate, so to speak, like being at a buffet. If you don't want your plate, I'm so many metaphors. I swear to God, I'm tired. Sorry, folks. I promise I do better than this when I'm
This
writing
is a
or editing.
professional editor, folks.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, but suppose you have a car that's also a buffet and you're filling your car with chicken wings. What are you talking about, Oliver? All right, back up. But yeah, it's just this kind of thing of like I want both. I want both. I want a variety of people to be heard
Hmm.
in the magazine. I want a variety of people to be displayed in our stories from a variety of cultures. And it's just a case of being careful not to load up 100% on any one group and the same as you would at the buffet, not get a plate of exclusively chicken wings. Unless
Right.
that's what you want, I guess, in which case more power to you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, like metaphors, not perfect.
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's really just a case of like seeing, okay, well, what cool women fantasy authors are out there that might be doing interesting things, and what cool people of color authors, and of course there's intersectionality, right? Like God forbid, oh no, we have a woman of color in the magazine. Okay, well, that's two tick boxes. God, I get so self-conscious when I'm talking about this because I care passionately about it, but I don't want to sound opportunistic. You know what I'm saying? It's
Hmm.
because it's true. Sometimes people like to kind of like sort of pay lip service to this aspect of creativity and be like, oh, we're being really representative or whatever. We have like one woman. But yeah, I'm babbling. I'm really sorry. Can I answer that
No,
one
that's
again one more
okay.
time?
No,
I'm so sorry.
I was just asking how you came across these people, how you were
Okay.
finding these kinds of authors.
I'm gonna just, yeah, sorry. I don't usually like to do a redo, but that got really messy. All right. Uh, I find women authors the same way I find authors of all stripes. By looking around, reading widely, being mindful of my sort of media diet in a given year. You know, if I'm
Okay.
exclusively reading from like
Hmm.
my own my people, middle-aged white straight guys, cisgender, etc. If that's all I'm reading, then I'm not getting the full picture. You know,
Right.
so I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm always trying to read a little bit, you know, broadly, a little bit of everybody. You know, and to pay attention to recommendations from other people, to look at like reading lists get published. You know, every once in a while you get like, you know, 10 trans authors to check out or whatever, you know. So I try and check out
Hmm.
lists like that and be like, okay, well, who should I check out? See who my friends are reading. Social media, obviously, is one of the big things there. You know, it's a great way to discover people. It's a great way to contact people.
Hmm.
I really like how social media, you know, for all that we gripe about it, and with good reason, it does make it possible for me to get in touch with creators more easily.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Primi Muhammad, for example, I just followed her because, you know, I've read a couple of her books and I like them. And I was like, well, I want to follow her online because that's fun. I never actually thought of contacting her for a Sword and Sorcery magazine. I just hadn't seen that in the writing of hers that I had read, you know, so far. And then one day she's posting, yeah, so, you know, I just like to reread pretty much all of Elric every year. And I like to
Wow.
doodle Elric. So here's some of my silly Elric doodles. And I was like, interesting. So I was like, all right, well, I already know I like her writing. Okay, she's into it. So I just, you know, I reached out and she was like, yeah. So we now have her in the magazine. You know, it's just like lots of little stories like that. Just trying to pay attention broadly, trying to read broadly, leaping on
Okay.
opportunities, or, you know, in other cases, like, you know, we have an author in the magazine, Thomas Ha, who, again, I checked out his writing. I hadn't read anything up to this point that screamed Sword and Sorcery at me, but I just thought about it and I was like, you know, I mean, I'm the editor, right? I can work with authors and be like, well, okay, you haven't done SNS necessarily, but you've done stuff that has vibes of SNS. Like, for example, Sword and Sorcery has strong horror roots, right? As you know, people who know, but those who aren't familiar, very quickly, you know, the pulp magazines of the 30s from which Sword and Sorcery were born, almost all the people who wrote that, pardon me, almost all the people who wrote that also wrote horror, and it really shows in the stories. So I was like, well, why not get a horror author and see if they can do Sword and Sorcery? And it works out. I mean, Gemma Files, right? Big
Hmm.
horror master there. Did us a Sword and Sorcery story last year, and Thomas Ha does a lot of horror. And I was like, well, let's check it out. So I wrote him, and I was like, hey man, I was thinking, you know, do you want to do a story for the magazine? What do you think? We chatted about it back and forth, and he was like, well, you know, and he said something I had no clue about before I approached him. Right? You got to talk to people to find these things out. He said, you know, I really love Clark Ashton Smith, and I would love to write a story in that vein. And I was like, yes,
Hmm.
please.
Wow.
So I'm
Yep.
not saying like it's a Clark Ashton Smith story, but just like, you know, it's Thomas Hall, like kind of thinking of something he loves from the Sword and Sorcery realm that I didn't know he loved before I spoke to him. So it's just, yeah, it's as simple as, like I say, outreach, right? Whether they kind of broadcast their Sword and Sorcery signal, like
Hmm.
Preview with their doodles, or you just kind of think it through and go, well, you know, horror author, it's pretty adjacent. Let's try to see what, you know, let's see what comes to talking with them. Boom, he loves Clark Ashton Smith.
Well,
And
with you saying that, it sort of brings up, I guess my a previous question should have been, how are you getting your stories, through soliciting or through submission? And you're going
yeah,
around
it's
herding
direct
people.
commission right now. It's
Hmm.
direct commission,
Okay.
and it probably will be next year for issues 5 and 6. I'm not going to lie, but I'm taking inspiration from another great magazine, Tales from the Magician's Skull, edited by Howard Andrew Jones.
Mm,
That is longer running by far than mine. It's been going, oh geez, when did it launch? Well, they're up to issue 11 anyway.
yeah.
And so yeah, it's a great magazine, great guy who runs it. I have lots of only lovely things to say about Howard. He's been very supportive and
Hmm.
helpful with my own endeavors.
Yeah.
My point, for their first 6 issues, 7 if you want to count, they also did kind of an issue 0. So
Right.
for their first 6 issues, basically, it was all direct commissions, right? It's a lot of people like Howard knew in his circle kind of thing. But then starting with issue 7 onward, they opened to submissions. I thought that was really smart because like submissions are a big deal, man. Like taking on a slush pile and all that, that's a whole big thing. And that's something I've never done before. So I'm very big on staggering this. So I master one aspect of the magazine and then I move forward, right? Issue 0, well, master. I get comfortable. Let's put it that way.
Hmm.
So issue 0, I was like, can I even make a magazine? Oh, okay, I can do that. Issues 1 and 2, can I like crowdfund the magazine and upgrade traditional printing and juggle 2 issues? You know, okay, I can do that. So now, you know, just gonna keep going basically until like I feel like by the time we're wrapping up issues 5 and 6 in 2025, um, I will probably be like, okay, I can make this magazine pretty darn good IMHO. Let's look at adding a new challenge. Let's look at adding Slush. So it's a goal
Blush.
to get there eventually, but I know it's a bummer
Mhm.
for any authors who are like, oh, I want to submit now. God damn it. I'm very sorry. We're just not taking submissions right now. But the plan is to
Alright.
get there. And also, once we start publishing books, like that'll be a whole other thing. So it's just this, yeah, it's this thing of it takes time to build this. And unfortunately, I'm not one of those lucky independent publishers who have like a really well-paying day job that I can use to kind of supplement the whole endeavor.
Mm,
So I have to be kind of conservative. I have to be very careful and in control of this thing,
right,
because I can't bail it out if like the crowdfund bombs or whatever.
right.
So having control is also kind of a form of safety, and part of that control is direct commissions, right? Yeah. Anyway, that was way more answer than you were probably looking for, but
No,
that's how it's
but
going for now.
that
It also
makes
means
that
that
makes sense.
Sorry, I was going to say it also means that once we do submissions, hopefully our voice will be very clear. And so
Yes.
people will have a better concept of like what we're going.
Well, because one of the interesting things I'm picking up here is that you said you're widely read, you're looking around. So
As much as one
the
man can.
well, yes, but the old uh I can't think of the word, but the old chestnut that, not as many women are interested in sword and sorcery as men, apparently is not quite the bit of conventional wisdom that people make it out to be. Because you're finding
Oh
people
yeah.
when you go out there and look.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's been very interesting about doing this is just the fact that like you can kind of get, I think this is the case with any niche hobby probably or subgenre or whatever. You can kind of get stuck and think that like your corner of the scene is the scene. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? You kind of feel like, well, where I hang out and a couple of little hangouts I know, that's the whole picture. But then you get
Right.
talk to people who aren't a part of that at all. And it turns out, yeah, they love it too. You know, they love it too. And actually, maybe there's this other clubhouse that you don't know about. Oh, well, let's go visit that clubhouse and meet some of the other people there. So yeah, like I really, really am big on now. I'm trying to like continuing to love and respect the people who helped me get this off the ground from what I would have called the sword and sorcery scene as
Mhm.
little as a year ago. And now I'm kind of like, well, that's a scene. What I knew was a scene. And now I'm gonna find other scenes, or I gotta find like other things like the dungeon synth connection I'm trying to build, you know.
Right.
Obviously TTRPGs is a pretty clear thing to try and make connections with. Yeah, I just want to find, other people who dig the thing and bring them in. And a lot of the time they're already kind of in it just somewhere else. So I want to build
That's great.
community. I really want
No,
to build
that
community.
I love that because, I mean, on the one hand, it's like, well, if
And
the
a lot of that's
world.
women, pardon me, to your
Yeah.
question.
Well, yeah, the world at large defines sword and sorcery as muscly guys in a fur loincloth winning the mincing damsel. I can definitely sit there and say, well, I don't see why too many women would be involved with that. But if it transcends that, speaking in part to what you have editorialized in the magazine about our little boom and people reading, wanting to write, and that turns out to be much broader than we thought. If we broaden the definition of it, hammer home a broader definition and bring in more people to help in the hammering, so to speak, so I can massacre a metaphor. I
Get a
think that,
buffet in there. It'll be
yeah,
great.
yeah. We'll end up with that buffet, and you can have all your chicken wings, but you don't need to. You can get some pizza and some prime rib as well. I do really like that though, because it's very encouraging. Because sometimes I'm just like, God, what do I do? If I want to, if there's someone I want to interest in sword and sorcery, I mean, I can point to some of the classics, but as we discovered on the Discord, as you discovered with your professional young person, Soph
Yeah, Sophia.
Magliano,
What we assume is a good intro story is not always a good intro story.
exactly. I was gobsmacked that, for example, Tower of the Elephant doesn't resonate like, because I'm like, that's perfect for what we want to say. Sword and sorcery should be about, and people going, "Heh." It's just like,
Yeah.
holy
It was
crap.
really funny too, right? Because it wasn't just So who was my young person that I went to for that interview you're alluding to, which can be found in issue 1. It was also my father. You know, he was in his 70s. He was
Hmm.
and like he just was like, ah, I got to the spider and I stopped reading.
Oh wow, yeah.
And he's reading Sword and Sorcery. He's reading lots of fun, you know, all this stuff. But like it just, yeah, I don't know, man. It was really funny watching him. And you know what story, or maybe you remember, but for listeners who aren't familiar with the interview, remember what was one story that really, really landed with Soph from the
Black God's
classic side of the
Kiss.
column, Black God's Kiss with
Yeah,
George Jury.
yeah.
So, you know, it's this kind of funny thing where like I feel like this is a genre that has been statistically dominated by you know, your white straight cis men, you know, fellas like myself, you know. Some people get their backs up when I say that, and I would encourage you not to, because none of this is about exclusion, right?
Right.
First of all, I'd have to get out of the room, and that would be sad. I like sword sorcery. It's about adding, it's about
Yeah.
inclusion. That's all that word means, is bringing people in, widening the circle. And so yeah, it's like, yeah, I mean, you know, there, CL Moore was there at the start. Sure, Charles Saunders was there, you know, as the first person of color writing Sword and Sorcery that we're aware of anyway. You know, pen names happen beginning in the 70s. But there's not a lot of, you know, Jessica Amanda Salmonson, you know, first trans person involved with SNS again, that
Hmm.
was public about their transness as both author and editor in the 70s and 80s. Like there has been representation prior to now, but statistically it's been completely out of whack with like the population at large. And that tells you that something is either wrong, or at least, you know, conditions are not ideal for the continued health and growth of this thing that we love.
Hmm.
And I would argue, I mean, I actually have what a lot of people call a kind of strict definition of the genre, but I do really like thinking about how you can tell a lot of stories within that genre, right? So sword sorcery is a distinct fantasy flavor, you know. And I will always be crowing about Brian Murphy's definition, his flexible 7 point definition
Right.
in Flame and Crimson: A History of Sword and Sorcery. Listener, I can't recommend that enough. Your TBR pile will explode if you read it. Um, but I feel like within those 7 points, you can just do so much. And that's the thing. Remember, I said earlier about false binaries, right? Like,
Yeah.
where are false choices? I fully believe you can have a fairly strict, not in the sense of gatekeeping, but in the sense of knowing what a thing is, right? We know what sword and sorcery is if X. But within that, you can do so much. So it's like you can have variety and specificity at the same time.
Hmm.
You know, you can have good stories told by a wide variety of people without sacrificing, you know, either quality or diversity. It's just this thing. Like, why not both? Why not have it all? Why not have your cake and eat it too? Back to the food metaphors.
With
So
your chicken wings.
with your chicken wings, yeah, and your car with an engine and four tires, or what
Yeah,
the hell I was
right.
babbling earlier that we maybe cut. Uh, so oh, listener, if that did get cut, just trust me. I got my tongue tangled in about three metaphors at once trying to answer one of the questions. It was amazing.
Well,
But
that's okay.
yeah.
We may keep that in just to
Oh
keep
no.
people. But but
Well,
it
anyway.
okay. So and I mean that's an important aspect of what we're trying to do with the new Edge.
Yeah.
It
It's
is
it broaden
that
the circle, make it
yeah.
healthy, bring in more people, more varieties of people, including younger people as well, right? That was something else I noticed. I was kind of looking around a lot of the SNS corners I was hanging in, and like 35 was young.
Yeah.
And like, not that
Yeah.
35 is old, any 35-year-olds listening, don't worry. But it's just again this thing of, and I've encountered it in other corners. I've been parts of, say, volunteer groups where like everybody's got gray hair, and you're kind of like, well, this isn't good in the long run.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's really just all about keeping SNS healthy and vibrant. It's not about, I don't know, making it unrecognizable for the people who've been here longer. You know, yeah, again, false choices, right? I can respect the classics. I can respect the people who've been here all along. I just also want to bring in new people and try and do new things on top of that within that.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
What was my other? Oh, here is another question, and this actually kind of plays into the diversity and inclusion. You had oh, I didn't write down the author's name. Now I'm an idiot. The discussion in one of the issues, neurodivergence in sort of.
John Olford.
Yeah, there we go.
He wrote that essay, and he is with us this year with a work of fiction. He's an
Ah,
excellent. He's an excellent
nice,
author of fiction, and has been getting published
nice.
all over the show the last year for
Hmm.
good reason.
Okay, good. It was really funny because I was reading that and I was thinking, in a lot of cases, it touched upon Conan, but it's like in a lot of cases, you can totally just point to all sorts of writing and say, there's already neurodivergence. We're just not slapping a word on it and talking about it in particular. But characters with PTSD, characters with obsessions, with intense focuses, as well as things like anxiety or depression and things like that.
Or what's the Conan phrase that he quotes in that article? It's like gigantic mirth and melancholy.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe he's got depression
I mean
sometimes.
that
I don't
that yeah, that's that,
know.
I mean, if you think about it, that could be a very apt description, right? Of bipolar. It's just
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
so
But this is the thing, right? Like, we've had women writing sword and sorcery before, so who cares about bringing more women in now, right? No, not that that's what you're saying, but I've heard it.
mhm,
And it's this kind of thing where, like, I'm not saying I invented anything. I'm
right,
saying we need more of this, and I want to contribute to more of
sure.
this
And
to
just to be
keep it
clear,
vibrant and move forward.
just
And
be,
so
to be,
then,
be
and so in
clear,
the
I'm not
article,
saying
right?
that.
No, no, I know. Oh yeah,
Right.
don't worry, folks. I'm not saying you're saying that.
No.
But it's just so. My point in saying that is to the neurodivergency in Sword and Sorcery article. What I said to John as my sort of editorial remit for that article, I was like, hey man, so you know, please show how it maybe has or could be interpreted as having, if it's not explicit, shown up in Sword and Sorcery before. Like for me, it's always about looking at the history as
Hmm.
well as the present and future. And so, and John did that as much as he could within a fairly limited word count, to be fair. It's only about a 1,500 word article.
Yeah.
But I just wanted this article to kind of be like, look, let's think about it, folks. Like maybe there's ways we can see ourselves if you yourself are neurodivergent in the history of it, right? It's nice to be able to see yourself in the history of something. Feel like you've always been around there, so to speak. But also look at possibilities to get excited about for your own creations in the present, if you write, or hoping
Hmm.
that other people write it kind of thing, and ways that it can be played with and done, more interesting and exciting things that never been done before, moving into the future. Like again, it's false choices, right? I don't think we have to choose between. Gosh, what am I saying? Sorry, again, puppy. God, my point is, by even just by saying, hey, let's think about it. Like you said, like think about it consciously.
Hmm.
What could that unlock? What excitements could that unlock in readers
Right.
and writers? I don't know,
Right.
but that's what you kind of hope with nonfiction. I feel certainly in the magazine, we want to get people just thinking and talking about things that maybe they had only thought about on their own, and then they see in the magazine, like, oh,
Hmm.
awesome, other people are talking about this. Oh, hey, what else could I? Yeah,
Sure.
I want to get people pumped. And to me again, it comes back to being like, hey, this genre is vibrant and has possibilities. So
Yeah. Well, it speaks to a theory I have, and actually, I have one character idea that someday I'll write about. But it's like so many heroes in fantasy, especially, but so many action genres, but in fantasy especially, are uh, in many ways they're like mass murderer axe murderers. They just are pointed in the right direction so that
yeah,
society approves of what they're doing because they happen to be wading through a bunch of cultists or a bunch of serpent men or whatever. So, it's like society will step back and say, well, this is kind of crazy, but, it's solving a problem for us. It's just
yeah.
how I kind of look at that sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the same way that like I think that's also how sometimes you get stories that are like, well, what about the Goon? Lots of people have done this in lots of shows and comics and stuff. I always think of Grant Morrison, and I want to say it was in The Invisibles.
Hmm.
His comic series, a very psychedelic kind of Vertigo series in the 90s, where there was like a whole issue all about a security guard's life. And you're like, why are we following this guy until the very last page where you see him guarding a facility that you saw the characters breaking into in the previous issue, and then it like catches up with the characters again, and one of them kills the guard and just keeps going like, whatever, man. Like I killed the guard, and now I'm in the next room I want to be in. But
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh man, that guy was a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Really.
And now you've
Really.
had enough time to spend with him. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, like yeah. Well, there you go, right? Something else to try. And it's only by trying things again that you keep it vibrant. Now all that being said, again, I sometimes you just want, some mighty thews and some treasure and some weird monster, and I
Right.
still really enjoy that stuff too. Again, false choices, right? False choices. You can enjoy all the things. I just want to have a greater variety of things. It's
Hmm.
it's when you have a kind of such a rigid, narrow definition and such a rigid, narrow range of possibility in the storytelling that things start to get choked out, stale, and boring.
Right.
And that's if I'm pushing back against anything, I suppose it's that. But I don't like to think of myself as being in any form of conflict with what I'm doing with the magazine. It's about
Hmm.
growing. It's about adding, but keeping it recognizable. Because if you dilute what it is, then it's just sparkling fantasy. You got to keep it recognizable as sword and sorcery.
I no, I totally agree, and that's what I applaud and love about this. I remember that big New Edge discussion on Whetstone, and I still remember your post where you're like, okay, I think I see where this is going. And things growing out of that, and it's very exciting. And it really is about a genre that's near and dear to my heart. And if we can actually build something here that people can look at, more people can look at, I just how wonderful.
Absolutely. And you know, like I say, to me it's contributing to me. You're always part of a continuity, standing on the shoulders of giants and all that good stuff. Whether it's the obvious thing of previous sword and sorcery editors and creators, or more eminently, I would be remiss not to mention that I did not actually coin the term New Edge Sword and Sorcery.
Right,
That was, remember I mentioned earlier, folks, Howard Andrew Jones.
right,
It was coined
right.
in the 2000s. It was his way of trying to describe something, you know, his take on it might be slightly different than mine, but fundamentally it was about like kind of knocking the rust off, New Edge, right?
Hmm.
You know, leaving behind some of the retrograde attitudes that you find in like older works and bringing forward all the stuff about sword and sorcery that's really cool, you know. And the 2000s, I guess, was a little too early. There were maybe a few too many people who remembered the very bad chintzy SNS of the mid to late 80s, and so it was hard to
Ooh,
get people excited about that.
yeah.
But I seem to have lucked out in the sense of coming in at a good time where there's a rising wave, perhaps a third wave. That would be nice. For those of you who don't know, first was the 30s with the pulps, second was the 60s through early 80s, starting largely with the Lancer Conan paperbacks. Um, yeah, and now we're hoping after SNS has laid fallow for 20 odd years, maybe we got a third wave going between Tales of the Magician's Skull and all sorts of hard work Howard put in there.
Hmm.
And then he's inspired both myself with this magazine. You've also got publications like Olden Quarterly with their kind of like dark fantasy skewed flavor of SNS. I really like what
Right.
they're doing over there. Whetstone, obviously, Whetstone magazine with their very democratic thing of like they're digital only. It lets them keep it free. Very sort of low stakes in terms of the payment and low word count to make it not so hard for newer authors to get a foot in the door publishing wise. They do only 1,500 to 2,500 words. Yeah, it's a lovely magazine. I had a story in issue 6, so why not, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, and there are others too. But I mean, we'll be here all night if I list everybody.
Thank
There's
goodness, too. Yeah,
yeah,
it's nice to be able to say that, actually.
yeah, it's nice to, isn't it? Right? Isn't it? So it feels like it's growing, and it's not just the publications and the authors. Because sometimes people get cynical and they say, "Oh, well, there's lots of people trying to publish, and half their readers are writers or whatever." Long story short, folks, the numbers do not bear out for that. They really don't. And if they did, if yeah, if the writers I'm aware of who are doing SNS, even if all of them backed my magazine, we wouldn't have made our minimum crowdfund last year. It just
Hmm.
there aren't enough authors as much or even as quote unquote aspiring authors. So I take issue with that term. If you're writing, you're writing. You're an author. But yeah,
Hmm.
you get my point. Like there's a growing audience and it's getting exciting. And the fact that it's just hard to even keep track of everything that's out there that I'm finding outside of what I was aware of for the most of the last 2 years, what I thought of as the scene. I'm finding other scenes, like I said. I mean, I just recently have you been reading the Black Beth comic published by Rebellion in the UK by Alec Worley? Artist's name is kind of a mononym. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Danny, Dani. But yeah, Black Beth, man, it's tight. And Alec plainly gets the material, as I'm sure the artist does too. Clearly gets the genre. I hadn't heard of it. And it's a revival of a comic from the 80s I hadn't heard of. You just got to keep looking out, keep looking out. If you, like I said, I love the classics. I still study and read the classics, got all on my shelf, pretty much. But, and antecedents to those classics, historical adventure fiction from the 1800s. But if you're only ever looking back, if you're only ever looking at a narrow version of the thing, you miss opportunities, including to build community, to enjoy new contemporary works. I keep coming back to that. I feel like I'm almost on a soapbox tonight with that. And I do apologize, listener, but it's just, I feel that strongly about it. And it's that kind of
Hmm.
passion I try to bring to the magazine and to the community building, like in this crowdfund. Oh, we brought it back into this in this crowdfund for issues 3 and 4 that we're doing, and that I want to bring forward into books if I get to do those later
Right.
this year. I don't mind revealing if this crowdfund succeeds. I hope to crowdfund one book, June-ish, let's call it,
Mm.
and that will be almost certainly a themed anthology. I've got
Ah,
a kind of
okay.
a thing thought up for that. It's very sword and sorcery rooted, but it's also mixing with something else, and we'll see how that goes.
Hmm.
More details to be announced later. And then the other thing is a book in August that will be, pardon me, September. I hope to crowdfund, which will be it'll be actually like a pair of novellas stitched together in one mass market paperback, kind of
Hmm.
like for those of you who are familiar, the old Ace doubles. which for those of you who aren't familiar, Ace Doubles were like a long line of paperbacks where it's just like two slim novels, but they're in
Yep.
one book. And you would like
Yep.
have a cover on one side, flip it upside down and around. Oh, hey, there's the other cover for the other book. And
Love
they
the
would both end,
doubles.
yeah, they would both end right in the middle, basically. And some other publishers have done similar since then, but Ace Doubles were like the biggie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I want to do that with novellas. I've got a pair of authors and artists and stuff all lined up for that.
That's
I've actually,
nice.
yeah, I've actually got the manuscript for the novellas already. And the longer term thing, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff I want to do, but the one longer term thing I'll mention is that those novellas I'm hoping will be the launching pad for going into 2025 at some point in that year, funding a bunch of different novella series. I really think, something that could be the future of SNS growing and getting further out into the broader SFF readership and just people at large who don't always read genre stuff, but just readers in general, um, is the novella. Because sword and sorcery is a genre that a lot of people will say is best suited with shorter stories. It
My
is born
favorite
out of
format.
yeah, it's born out of short stories, right? But
Yeah.
short stories and magazines, like I love this magazine, but like most people don't read short fiction. They most people prefer novels or at least things that are bookish, right? So I feel like like they have a book form, and so I'm thinking, yeah, it wouldn't be fun to do novellas. I'm looking at things like what Tor does with their novella series. Why couldn't we have a serialized episodic line of one author with one character? You check in on them, like oh god, I forget the author's name, the woman who does Murderbot.
Martha Wells?
Thank you. Martha Wells with Murderbot, right? I'm looking at what she's doing with Murderbot, where each book you can read on its own, but if you read all of them, you get the kind of reward of the overarching story
Mhm.
coming
Yeah.
together. Why am I not doing that? Well,
Mhm.
I know I'm not doing that yet because I'm not there yet with my with resources and publishing schedules and stuff. But I said to myself, I was like, why am I not doing that? Why
Mhm.
am I not taking like maybe a character from New Edge Sword and Sorcery that people have enjoyed in a couple of short stories and then blowing them up with their own novella series? Why am I not having like 4 or 5 novella series where yeah, like I said, anyone stands alone. You can start with book 3. Who cares? But once you read one, you'll want to get all the other ones, kind of thing. And why not have like little Easter eggs and rewards, for those people who read all of them? Yeah. But it's a book, so it's easy to promote and get on bookshelves and sell and make people aware of. More people will try a novella, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the longest term thing I'm willing to mention.
Okay.
But it all comes back to this magazine and getting these 2 issues
Right.
funded. I want to do more stuff with the magazine.
Yeah.
And like, and you know what's wild, folks? There's so much stuff in these 2 issues. I haven't even mentioned that we have Harry Turtledove for a story.
Wow. Nice.
And like, no shade on Harry. I'm so happy to have him. I think he's got a really great story, which, as you can imagine, with him, folks, if you don't know, Harry Turtledove is he's written quite a bit of actually very good fantasy, but his stuff in
Mhm.
general is he's mostly known for his alternative histories.
Yes.
And just in general, all of his work is rooted very much in historical study. Even when it's like a secondary world, it'll be really riffing off of,
Right.
contemporary, sort of our world's history in some fashion.
Hmm.
So yeah, so his story is very grounded in our world and our history. But yeah, like Harry Turtledove is a great name. I'm very happy to have him in the magazine. And I'm only mentioning him now just about at the end of the interview because I just have so many bits and pieces I'm so excited to share with y'all. It's all going to be in the campaign page. It's all going to be
Yeah,
there.
that'll
So
be there on February
speaking of which,
15th, 8 a.m.
EST, yeah, come in for at least the first 48-hour, backer reward.
Hmm.
Compete with absolute, bloodlust in your heart for the first reward, the first backer reward.
Yes. I don't know if I'll
uh,
make it 8 a.m. That's kind of early for me, but
yeah, unfortunately, I'm sorry, man. Yeah, it's not time
uh,
zone friendly,
yeah, this
but
East Coast favoritism,
it
Oliver. We're gonna
is,
have to
it
talk
is.
about this.
Well, I could have set my alarm for 4 a.m., I guess, and be nicer to like the West Coast. But then what am I doing to the people in I don't know, Mongolia? But yeah, so yeah, and I mean, how do you find it? It's on BackerKit. You can just go to BackerKit and search for New Edge Sword and Sorcery. We also got a big button at the website, newedgeswordandsorcery.com. Or the simplest thing, I could give you, Kirsten, a link to put in the show notes if you would be ever
Hmm.
so kind, directly to the
Absolutely.
crowdfund.
Hmm.
So there you go. Right. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to ask me about? I feel like I've so much.
I don't
Is
know.
this my
We've
way?
covered a lot. We're well into the 75-minute mark, if not later. So I think we've covered a lot. I know people who know Oliver are going to be surprised, but
Oh, he talked a lot, did he? Oh, yeah. I haven't even talked much about the art. I guess I talked about Saprophile and the funny thing of
yeah,
Saprophile.
right.
It's just so many of the artists we got in this one. We got Goran Gligovic. A lot of people love his
Oh
rendition
yeah,
work.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
We've got returning champions that people love as well, like Daniel Vega, Cameron Pulaski. Like again, like I start listing names, and I start getting anxious about the names I'm not listing. Like I love
Mhm.
everybody's in the thing.
Yeah. I know
And then,
I know how
yeah,
that can be, but then again, you make it just your big TOC list off.
yeah, so it's a lot to list them
Yeah.
all verbally. But yeah, so I mean, like, what can I say? Like, we've got Harry Turtledove, we've got Michael Moorcock returning with an Elric reprint that's not in the main collections. We've got Jarella Jory. We're bringing back like, one of the core canonical characters, a brand new
Hmm.
double length story. Daryl Keogh will have a double length
Ah,
Orhan story, Orhan the Snow Leopard.
I like watching, and I know that Daryl has done other other things. I know that he's not like what you would call a new author, but I
No,
like watching him, just watching him grow through New Age. And I think, where else have I seen him? I think it would be Tales of the Magician's Skull, maybe. I don't know where
I
else
know,
I've
I
seen
know.
him.
Yeah, no, he hasn't been in there. He's had his own publications. Sword of the Four Winds, which is a whole mess of
Okay.
short stories by centered around four different characters
You
in
know
this,
what? It
including
might be
Orhan.
that because I may have actually I know I purchased something of his for Kindle.
Yeah,
So
and he's been published in other magazines like Heroic Fantasy Quarterly. He had an Orhan specific collection, Tales from the Snow.
yes.
Sorry, gosh,
Okay.
I'm screwing up the name. It's like something of the Snow Leopard, Track of the Snow Leopard. Anyway, yeah,
Hmm.
he's working getting out his own stuff as well as getting out of the magazines and so on. I mean, which is what you hope. You want success for the your authors in quotation marks, the ones you publish.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I'm very happy to have a double length Orhan story, which is going
That's
to be
good.
the art will actually be by Goran Gligovic. So get to
Nice.
see him do
Very
something in a
nice.
kind of like fantasy Mongolian vein, which will be
Hmm.
new, at least going by what I've seen of Goran's work online for him. So that's pretty cool. Uh, yeah, like I say, like just all these bits and pieces and the crowdfunding exclusives with the fun sticker page, the unlockable bonus stories and digital, these first and top backer rewards.
Yeah.
And like I say, those are just the ones I'm telling you about right now. There's going to be more stuff that'll come, to light and be revealed as we go deeper into the campaign
The
with all
crazy
our
live stream party, launch party,
live stream
7 p.m.
parties. Yeah, we've got the launch day party, the Molly Jarrell interview, the Dungeon Synth rotating, DJ thing, interviews, the story chat for like an in-depth nonfiction style discussion of a story, and then the final Friday telethon on March 15th, 7
Hmm.
p.m. EST. Where there'll be potentially some role-playing game action and some other fun stuff.
That'll be great.
Yeah, and again, just the bookmark ribbons with the hardcovers. Did I mention those? Yeah, there's so much, man. There's so much. You got to go to the campaign page
Hmm.
just to be able to like take it all in, at your own pace, reading with fun images rather than hearing me run out of breath.
Yeah. Will do. Will do. And yeah, send me that link and I'll make sure to get it to our Geekshock editor to include in our show notes. And we'll probably put up on the relevant site and fan page as well as we get closer to launch time.
Cheers.
Absolutely. It's always a joy talking to you, Oliver. Like you and I talked about before, I also spoke about this with Howard Andrew Jones. It was revelatory for me to stumble across Whetstone Discord and discover a community of people who really did love sword and sorcery, even if some even more than I did, for God's sakes. And it's very exciting and very satisfying.
Isn't it though? It's finding people with the passion for the thing you love. I mean, isn't that just the root of all these
Yeah,
things that we enjoy so much? It's
yeah.
that connecting, that community.
Well, thank you very much, Oliver Brackenbury of Brackenbury Books, a soon to be major force of publishing for sword and sorcery and other fine fantasy genres, maybe. But thank you for your time, Oliver. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on. This was really fun.